Good Friday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate life and the pursuit of happiness. We are presented by Yes Realty Partners, and of course, live in Charlottesville, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth country and the world on the I Love Seaville network, powered by the fantastic people at Segura Solar. Segura Solar, look them up online if you want some energy efficiency. Segura Solar, your choice. And certainly suggested by Real Talk. Judah Whitcower is our director. We've been very much looking forward to today's program. I believe his second rodeo on set here at Real Talk. Supervisor Ned Galloway in the house, and our very good friend, Keith Smith, with a brand new shirt.
Brand new shirt, thank you.
In the house, looking sharp.
Thank you. I walked in to see what was going on at Brooks Brothers, and somehow or another I got a free shirt, so I wasn't. That
does not surprise me. You know everybody.
Well, I don't know about anybody, but I kind of sweet talked to me.
I bet you did.
Hey, we want to give a shout out to Shenandoah Joe, because without the caffeine, I don't think we'd actually get the day rolling here. This is a fun day. I love having Ned next to me. We sit on the Regional Housing Partnership together, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission together. So I'm going to get out of the way, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then tell a little bit about what you do for a living. That'd be fun.
Yeah, so Ned Galloway, I'm on the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors, just finishing my first term, looking forward to starting my second term here come January 1. But my day life, I am in the car business. And I'm the general manager of Car Lots, which is over on Pantops Mountain. We opened there in June of this year. I was previously with Car Lots going down to Midlothian in Richmond, where Car Lots started 10 years ago, back in 2011. So Car Lots, brand new car dealership here in town, but we are a little bit different than everywhere else. We are a consignment store. So we're selling cars for other people and other businesses and entities. So it's remarketing. And it was interesting, Keith. A few weeks ago, we were in the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. A supervisor from Greene County was talking about some things he had interest in, and specifically about how you can't really regain or take advantage of equity in our vehicles. Mm-hmm. We can in our homes. And that made me think, that's exactly what Car Lots is all about. And the basic concept in consignment is you bring us your car. You go into a traditional dealership, you go to CarMax, you try to sell it, and you're never happy with what your trade value is. So you bring the vehicle to Car Lots, you pay a fee, and then we sell your car. Now, there are things that, it has to pass inspection. There's safety things that must be passed, and you might have to invest a little bit in the vehicle to get it there. But then we market that just below retail, behind whatever the average retail price is for the car, and you can make more money than you can on trade. So now we are retailing the car for you, and you get the equity in the vehicle versus the dealership getting the markup. So it's a phenomenal concept that our CEO, Michael Bohr, and the other two founders, Aaron Montgomery and Will Bolin, started back in 2011, off and running. They had started with that first little store in Midlothian, started to expand in Virginia, and now we're almost up to 30 stores nationwide.
Wow.
Went public this year. So Car Lots is
off
and running.
Went public this year?
Yeah, we were earlier this year in January.
Wow, that's a fast track.
Car Lots went public, and we've been expanding out. And we're in a lot of large markets now. We're in Seattle. We're down in Atlanta. We just opened our Atlanta store. So we're coast to coast and filling out, and we'll continue to do the plan. But it's for the buyer side. People come in. I have a fantastic team here at Charlottesville. You bring your car in. It's 15 minutes. We can do a consult to let you know what your car is worth. And tell you what we would sell it for, and then we'll even go over what we think wholesale numbers or trade numbers are for you to show you what your gain would be over the typical process that you would have available to you, trading or selling outright. And people just don't want to go through the hassle of selling their own car.
Sure.
They can't finance people. They get a little worried about who's coming to test drive the car, et cetera, et cetera. So bring it to us, pay us that fee, and after the fee, usually people end up making a couple grand more than what they can on their trade. Buyers get pre-discounted prices because they're already priced below average. My team is not commission, so it's not going to be the same experience where you go in and get these high-pressure type of
the hard sale.
We are a fun place, man. You work with the whole team, end up to buy a car, you end up working with 3 or 4 different people. We try to make it fun and fast, have good music on. We've got the foosball in the showroom. So, come on over if you want to learn more about maybe how you can make some money on your car. Get that free consult and maybe take a look at the inventory while we're there. But
how's your foosball game?
My foosball game is not too great. But the way that I hear that table gets racked sometimes, there's some people out there must know what they're doing. 'Cause
Okay.
it can make some noise, the foosball table. But yeah, car lots in Charlottesville. So I, appreciate the chance to be able to take a few minutes to tell a little bit about what
Well, we're
what
going
we
to
do.
talk a little bit more about it because this is the first opportunity of 245 shows that I can ask an inventory question of somebody else.
There you go.
So,
How did the pandemic impact inventory?
oh, stop it.
Chemistry.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. So that question right
So,
there.
well, inventory is different for us. A traditional dealership, you acquire cars from a manufacturer. If you're in used cars, it's either via trade-in or you have to go to auction to purchase your inventory, and then you own it as a dealership, and then you have to sell that. Well, car lots is different in that we don't necessarily own the inventory. Somebody else does, and we're facilitating the sale for them. So we source differently for the most part. So that has allowed us to have an inventory level that's a little different than where everybody else is suffering, because the auction prices have been going nuts. You've got rental car companies out there buying cars because they can't get new cars because of the chip piece, so that's putting pressure on retailers, and they can't get vehicles, and if they can, the prices have gone up, which is why used car prices, everything's skyrocketing. But for us, we still have clients, national accounts, and plus local people who are trying to move their vehicle will bring it to us, so we source differently. It's allowed us to have, typically, I'd say that's probably the case in all our markets, have more inventory than maybe what you might see on some of the more traditional cars.
Your lot is full, man. I live on that side of town. I drive by your lot all the time. You are full.
Yeah, we've sold through. I mean, obviously, since we have cars, that helps your sell-through rate. But, it's because we're not actively, you don't actively go out, you're kind of contingent on whatever your pipeline is. Sometimes it takes a little longer for us to backfill. But yeah, we've heard from consumers coming in that they're like, you're the only lot that has some cars right now. And it's not that other places don't have cars, but we tend to have a little bit more selection and, just more parked there, ready for sale, so people can come in and get a car.
In a certain way, our businesses are not very different, right? We're inventory is key,
Right.
is king in what we're trying to do. And to play off of what Jerry said, you drive down 250 in Pantops and you see a lot of cars in it. So I just wanted to give Carl Lots a shout out before we kind of moved into the
Appreciate that.
state of the health of Albemarle County at the end of the year. So let's segue into that. So
Yeah.
from Mr. Chairman, from your perspective, what's the state of the health of Albemarle County at the tail end? And we'll try to get into a few other things after that.
Well, I would recommend, we did at our meeting 2 days ago, the county executive did his year-end of review, and there's a video that captures some highlights from the year. About 10, 15 minutes. It's available on our website. So I would recommend folks go check that out. But when you watch that, even though we're in a pandemic, we're still dealing with a lot of issues from that, and our economy's been robust and strong. I'm sure we'll be talking about revenues and things like that, and real estate assessments, and as the show goes on. But
That's a hot topic.
yeah, we've still been able to do good things throughout the year in terms of providing the services that our citizens expect from their local government. And that's on the shoulders of a staff that are still dealing with the fact that we froze positions 2 cycles ago when the pandemic first hit, where we did cost cuts, and we'll talk more about that too, about surplus monies and revenues and costs and things, because we've made some decisions in the past 30 days based on what we know now. But it's been a phenomenal year. Not that it doesn't have its challenges. There are things where we need to make improvements, and I'll be happy to, I know the last time I was on the show, talking about the pipeline, getting things through our community development department, and that was, when you freeze positions, that's going to have an impact on that. You don't have as many people as you need to process stuff. So mid-year, we're going to hire positions into that department right now. We're not waiting for the next fiscal year. So that's a mid-year adjustment from staffing that's designed to try to get at that, right? So the fact that we're able to do that is good, but it does come out of the fact that our county executive and the finance team in Albemarle were very cautious and conservative when the pandemic first hit. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing, in some years you can have a surplus, you can run extra money, but this year it's a little different in that the reason for it is different. It's not this that, we didn't know what to expect from a cost perspective or a revenue perspective. And now we're seeing what's happening. And when you factor in ARPA money and the federal money that's come down too, we didn't know that was going to exist when we made those decisions. So all of that has produced a new situation that's unique that we're going to work through and do.
So how does that play into budget for next year, right? So if you have a surplus, this, if you don't mind, just give me like a budget 101 class, right? If you have a surplus and we're talking about potentially, it looks like an 8+% increase in appraised values or assessed values, excuse me.
And that's on average. Some districts, like the district I'm in, 11.14% increased on average.
And we'll talk about a little bit later how you can contest those. But
So, I mean, it's twofold. I mean, for the coming year, for the coming budget cycle that we'll go through, the question or the conversation will be around, well, okay, what do we project for the coming fiscal year based on this spike that we've now seen? Because if you look back over 5, 6, 7, 8 years, what the trends are, there's clearly a blip that's happening right now. So the difficult part will be, how do you project, will it dip back? Will it dip back some? Will it stay where it's at? So that projection ability is what's going to be interesting as we go through this next budget cycle. For the current year, we've done something that we typically don't do, where we're recognizing that revenues have indeed come in stronger based, not only are the revenues higher than what we projected, much higher than what we projected, we're going to go ahead and make some adjustments now mid-year. We did that with the 6% salary. That goes into place in beginning of January. And we hired positions in police, Department of Social Services, the Community Development Department, like I said. So we're recognizing that we have resources coming in, and we need to go ahead and get things right within the organization right now, mid-year, even though it's out of budget cycle. You get that new base or foundation set for what your costs are, so that as we go through this budget piece, then we'll build on top of these changes that we've now made.
so for those who and I'm struggling. I've been doing this for 10 years on the commission. My business, we all do an annual, like January 1 is budget, but your actual budget year starts in July. So we're like when you say you're in the middle of a budget year, you're in the middle of a budget year, unlike our budgets are about ready, and your work budget is about ready to end and start a new budget in January. So if I'm hearing this right, so you're going to try to, this coming year, we're looking at roughly an 8% increase on average all the way across the board. So just go through the budget process a little. There's basically 3 components to it, right? We talked about this with Jesse Rutherford of Nelson County, right? You have the assessment, right? Then you have your budget, and then you set the tax rate. So what the goal is the goal to be revenue neutral? In other words, to me, am I going to go ahead and and I've already got phone calls from folks on this already,
questions are coming in on this.
Is my monthly dollar that I spend going to go up, or we're just going to balance it out? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. So that's
maybe that's a crystal ball question.
That's the basic kind of steps that go through. So the county executive is step 1, right? So our budget team has to get together and project, what do we think our costs are going to be? What do we think the revenues will be? And I think coming out of this past year, that's a difficult task because of this increase or this blip that we've seen. Now, in addition to that, though, we also froze positions and we held costs back. So now we have to get that back in line because we've felt that. I mean, there are services that are not being delivered in this way that we would like them to be because we've basically don't have enough people to do it. So the county executive's first part has to take the best projection they can give on what do we need to be able to provide services versus what do we project in terms of the monies or the revenues coming in to be able to pay for that. And that piece of what you're asking, well, does the tax rate stay the same? Does it equalize? Does it go up? Does it go down? That is all based on, the strategic plan that the Board of Supervisors has set forward and the county executive's assessment of what do we need in order to make that happen. And then that conversation then balances based on that.
The rate is the one. So the assessment is set, and we're going to talk about how you can appeal that, right? Because there is a process to do that. On that, if you feel that you're overassessed, the
value is different. Yep.
On that end, your value is different. Thank you. And then the budget, and then the rate goes back and forth. And the question that I get all the time is, as we know, we have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. The taxes and the insurance is what fluctuates my monthly payment. So even if my assessed value went up
and the rate stays the same,
then I'm paying more money.
That's right. So that's the part where if the double hit would be, well, if you raise taxes and that value.
That's exactly right.
If you leave it the same, then yes, the homeowner or our citizens might see more out of pocket coming from it. And if you reduce it down, that's how you could potentially equalize it. And that conversation, or how we figured that out, is based on the county executive, again, figuring out what do we need in order to deliver not just the services we said we were going to deliver, but achieving the strategic plan of the board. And that is what starts that conversation about the tax rate in all forms. So, he'll make a suggestion, Jeff Richardson, just like every county executive or city manager will, and that'll include, well, here's what we think we need to do this year. That will mean this, because we try to look out in 5-year plans, and this is what it could mean, further out. And then how does that align with what the Board of Supervisors has said we want to do in relative to things like our climate action policy and our housing Albemarle, our employees, keeping our employees compensated. And there's everybody out there sees the fight for employees to retain. So we have to do what we can. We've got great employees. We don't want to lose them. So what are we doing for them? So all of that plays into that factor, and then it gets handed over to the Board of Supervisors after the county executive makes the recommendation, and then it's us. We go through the budget book, and it's no matter what the county executive suggests or recommends, it's up to the Board of Supervisors to go, okay, we're going to do that recommendation, or we're going to make alterations. And if you go down, where if you did something where, like, let's say, well, we want to reduce the tax rate, and the county executive wanted to keep it the same, well, then it's going to be up to the supervisors to say, well, how are you going to then either pay for what you're losing, or what are you going to cut? And then that's the conversation we get into. If you add money, like if we said, well, let's raise it up over what the county executive, then the question will be, well, okay, well, you're going to get more revenue from that. What are you going to use that for? And then it's up to the supervisors to identify that. So that's when I always say this, when I'm in front of folks, is that if you want to see what your supervisors are really all about, pay attention to what they're advocating for and voting for during the budget season.
Budget season,
because their priorities will come through, and it's not necessarily the big item. Like, well, okay, we're going to vote on the tax rate. Well, sometimes it's the 80,000 or the 180,000 that's getting maneuvered. Well, I want to take this from here and put it over there. And when you watch supervisors, including myself, do that, that starts to pick up on, okay, that's what that person, I've heard that person say they value that, or that's important to them, and now there's the budget maneuver that's backing that up. So
let me throw this to you. And Ray Cadell, who is in your district, has a question for you about the Rio complex from this past Wednesday night. We'll get to that, but I want to throw this to you. So we all know that inflation is impacting us. Grocery store, we're seeing gasoline prices go up. We understand that the county is becoming, from a housing standpoint, perhaps less and less affordable. Home prices are going up. We all know that. We're considering perhaps a meals tax increase and a lodging tax increase. Are any concern, anywhere you want to go on this topic of all these colliding at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
Disposable income seems to be very, very stretched right now for a lot of families, and certainly the families that are living on the margin.
Mm-hmm. So, there's a couple things there to try to pull apart, I suppose. The meals tax and the lodging tax, you're hoping you're capturing folks that, don't live in Charlottesville but come here, spend time here, and then, they're utilizing the infrastructure. They spend the weekend, they spend a week, and then they go. So you want to try to capture some revenue from those folks. The inflation piece, that's exactly why we did the 6% increase for our employees. We looked back over the last 7 or 8 years, and on average, we were giving maybe a 1.5%, 1.7% salary increase, and inflation was at that or sometimes even higher. So we've basically, over the last 7 or 8 years, have not moved our own employees at all. Meanwhile, costs are still increasing, et cetera, so they're seeing more and more come out of their pockets. So that, I made the comment when we made the decision to do the 6% raise right now for them, that's just right-sizing for our employees. We have to then, in the next budget cycle, use that as our baseline and go, what are we going to do now next year? Because we can't just immediately, oh, we gave them a 6% raise, we shouldn't do anything else now. We have to think of that as the baseline where it should have been, and then continue to make decisions as we would year in, year out. So, how I think about things like that, if we're a major employer, I mean, there's larger employers around, but employers have to take care of their employees. If they're keeping them above or in front of the average inflation that's happening over time, then you hope that they're earning more, that they're going to be able to go out, and that their participation in the local economy kind of helps everything. And then that's what, ultimately that helps local government as well. And, the expectations haven't lowered for what they would like to see the local government doing in terms of delivering services. And I don't think we're there in delivering in a way that I think the expectation is. And that takes resources to eventually get there. So that's always the tricky part. Yes, we have to be mindful of the fact that this means more money coming out of our citizens' pockets, but it's also trying to meet what we, at least based on our strategic plan and what we hear from people, what we're trying to achieve as a county.
Follow up, and then I'll get out of your way, Keith, because I know you have one going. Is there trepidation that if we increase real property tax assessments, that we will make the jurisdiction less affordable from a housing standpoint?
I think it's already less affordable from a housing standpoint. I don't think.
Will this make it more?
Well, of course it will. I mean, it means that when costs go up, it makes it more difficult, and it's going to take some people out of reach. I mean, that's our whole point of being in a regional housing partnership, is trying to figure out ways to not just price everybody out and who do we lose and who gets cut out of home ownership or having even a rental option from that standpoint. I would like to think that's the work we're trying to do through the regional housing partnership, and all the conversations that we're having, because that's kind of on it. There's really nothing we can do to stop that, right? I mean, we can adjust the tax rate, that would have a difference, but that's not going to be like, oh, Albemarle changed the tax rate, that's going to stop all of this momentum that's happening. So there are other methods that I'm sure we're going to talk about today about how do we get the right mix, and how do we keep so that this community doesn't become just folks that can afford what those housing prices are.
So the only way I know how to do it is what we're doing on the Regional Housing Partnership, is put everybody at the table and have an open and honest discussion and bring all the pillars that are required to do this, as the public, the private, the nonprofits, and the people who we serve. And I think we do that well. We're about ready to start our strategic plan. We're in the middle of our strategic plan process for that. So this is a great thing to participate in. But look, we this is just three guys having a cup of coffee, BSing about stuff, right? One of the things that we constantly talk about on the show, Ned, is this bringing this red tape into green tape, right? And Anthony Harrow was on the show a couple of days ago, and it was just awesome that they fast-tracked that project through in about a year. So how can we do that and get, and I'm trying to dovetail into this UVA announcement, which is really what I want to kind of talk a little bit about today here on that end of it, about the process of the properties they're going to do. But what can we do collectively to help that process? Does that make sense to speed that along? What can we do to help that?
Well, I mean, from Albemarle's perspective, it's what I'm talking about, where we hired mid-year the staffing to get to community development. I mean, the last trip around on this show, we were talking about, I think it might have been Neil who chimed in about, it's our community development in a lot of ways, processing permits, building all of the things they do. That's a revenue generating type of endeavor. And the fact that it's backlogged or slowed down is problematic. So how do you get things to the market? Well, you got to have the staff in there to do it. So, when we go through a budget cycle and you're like, oh, well, you're just adding staff on. Well, where is that staff going? Well, right now we send it over to community development because we knew that was a problem.
You got 3 months on building permits.
And we've got Department of Social Services. Of course we need more staff in social services right now. We sent more positions to the police staff just last night in a community advisory committee meeting, talking about speeding. Traffic is a huge concern all over the county, and how the patrolmen are stretched to be able to go out and enforce and police. Well, how do you fix that? More staff. So that staffing piece is how we're going to have to get at this. We don't have the staff currently in place to meet our strategic plan. And the step that we took a few weeks ago to add positions, and then this budget cycle, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of conversation about what we need to do in order to make that happen. Like the thing with Anthony, that's how a local government can attempt to do something that is worthwhile. I mean, the one trepidation about that project was we were taking commercial property and reverting it to residential. And we have a very limited development area, and we took a
dilapidated commercial property.
Well, it was
in bad shape.
That's right, but it couldn't turn into anher commercial endeavor.
But there is a commercial portion of that project.
That was an important piece of that. Let's keep some commercial, some sort of commercial activity on that site. Because if you've got a very limited development zone where commercial activity is supposed to go, that's zoned for it, and you turn it into residential, that's gone forever. And it's not like you regain it somewhere else outside of that 5%. But that was, the county saying, all right, that's a great project. That's going to immediately, in the short term, help short-term homelessness, and in the long-term help with, some of the most dire folks from a housing perspective, that once that project's fully up and running is going to impact that. We all saw the value of that. What was interesting, you mentioned Anthony. We were down at the Governor's Virginia Housing Conference, and Anthony gave a presentation there about converting that hotel into for permanent affordable housing. And the first question that the moderator asked, it was a big room. Anthony had a great crowd for that. And they asked Anthony, NIMBYism always pops up. And, you'd expect for an area that's going to serve homeless folks and helping them get into, that could be something that people that live there might get a little squeamish about. And Anthony said, actually, it didn't happen, and the local residents that did reach out were actually making suggestions or asking questions of concern, like, how are they going to access a grocery store when it's across Rio? So I think you could see some people kind of leaning back in their seats when Anthony talked about what the reaction was. But, I think our community understands that there's an affordable housing crisis in our community, and they are all working, I believe, to change their minds to help fix it. Case in point, the Rio Point question from a few nights ago.
Ray Cadell's asking that. He's got a follow-up for you. He's in your district.
Well, when that project first came to us, in the emails and everything, you don't really get a taste of this in the public comment, but it had a lot more public comment the first time it was around, and all the emails were coming out. And you can kind of break it down into what you have. You could have advocates, but you could also have folks that are just against. And against meaning we don't want any development. We don't even want the buy right development. So you can put some in that category. Then the bulk of people in the middle start hitting on the impacts and the concerns of having a development. So transportation, obviously traffic, that sort of thing. But what happened different that started to happen from a year ago or a year and a half ago was that folks were starting to talk about, well, is just putting an apartment complex, one housing unit type, is that what makes the most sense to do? So the conversation started to shift in that community where they were talking about, could there be small homes and townhomes, a mixture, middle density kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, that's just happening out there in the community, that conversation's changing some. So to me, that shows that I think people recognize and understand that we do have an affordable housing piece, and how do we get at that with also addressing issues like transportation, fast, quick density that's going up, et cetera.
So let me throw you this one. This is from, there's a lot of coming in on that. He says, Ray does, I know Ned voted against it, but I'd love to hear why his fellow supervisors were for the Rio apartment complex from Wednesday night. I'm a private property rights guy, he says, but a rezoning is a completely different issue. If I own a piece of property, it's reasonable to expect the adjacent or nearby properties to remain zoned as they were when I bought mine.
So 3 supervisors voted for it the first application came through. And there was nothing that happened in this application that would change their mind to go from a yes to a no. In fact, in their minds, they felt things were improved from the first application. So for the 2 supervisors that went from no to yes, Supervisor Price, I know, had very specific concerns about the traffic and the infrastructure and the transportation problems around in the first go-around, and felt satisfied that what's in place now since then is enough to go ahead and let's go ahead and vote for this. Outside of that one issue for her was there. Supervisor Malik also felt that there were improvements relative to the to the project internally with how he's doing the buildings and the layout, also with some of the transportation piece. But, at the end of the day, it's very difficult, I think, for supervisors when you're in a development area. There are, like I said, some folks that would love to see that land just stay as it is and be a park or not even have the by right development on it. Because, 15 years ago, if you drove past there, it looked like a country road.
It did.
It was a
development
working farm 15 years ago.
Yeah, you drove through, you saw cattle, you went to Penn Park, and there were trees lining the road. So it's a very different look today than it was then. So the kind of no development at all folks are remembering that and want that. That's what they moved into and bought into. I think now you're seeing with developments where it's like, well, okay, we have this growth coming, and we have a strategy in Albemarle that we're going to protect 95% of this county from that development, and we've targeted this development zone for this type of high density. And that's where Rio Point sits in. It's in a place, it's very close to downtown. There's, if you went back over the last 10 years in that specific area, I listed all the different communities that have built out, starting with Belvedere. There's been a ton of growth and development in that area, including now with this new roundabout coming, a second major VDOT project because they got the intersection wrong the first time.
So talk about that for a second, because they got it wrong the first time. Where exactly is that roundabout?
So it's right where the intersection is now. They'll put a roundabout in.
So which intersection are we talking about?
It's right out front of K-Tech at John Warner
the
and
traffic
Ryan.
light that's
Yeah.
there. Mm-hmm.
So that's an improved smart scale application for funding. So when I say like Supervisor Price felt like that wasn't even on the radar when this application was in front of us. That's how fast that project came through. And the corridor study that's happening on Rio was not in existence the first time the application came through. So you have two major things that have happened that are addressing the transportation issues there, and that was persuasive to some. So when I say some of the supervisors that voted for it the first time, that just adds to their rationale to stay supportive of it.
So most people do not know smart scale. One of the criteria of smart scale, and that's the reason it ramped up, is there has to typically be a rezoning application attached to it, which kind of drives it, which floats it up to the top. So that's one of the reasons why that roundabout's and I know that firsthand because we were part of that out in the roundabout in Fluvanna County.
But you've had Belvedere. Belvedere's now acquired more land. They're going to continue, and that's not built out yet. You've had the Saka Center come on. You've had the Reserve at Belvedere come on. You've had the Center come on. You've had Dunlora Park, Dunlora Ridge, Dunlora Gates. You've had Dunlora Forest.
The Senior Center.
Treesdale. The centers out there on Belvedere. You've had the lofts at Meadow Creek. You've had Penfield Lane. Thousands of units right in that area. So this Rio Point, the Wetzel property, there's one little small property next to it that looks like it's going to develop through a by right. But this is the last kind of track or chunk of land there, aside from maybe some smaller parcels that's going to add to the density of that area. But we're talking. When you work in Lachlan Hill, which empties into the county, but a lot of that's in the city, actually, across the boundary.
It's about half in the city.
There is a ton of development that community has had to deal with development and density increase and, a lot of construction activity that comes with it for the last 10 years.
Well, I can share, I had a meeting with the folks at Southern Development about their projects that they're doing on the back of Belvedere and connecting those sections. But almost the whole project is already sold out of the sections that they have been released. And Mr. Miller, I might have to sneeze. You stare at the light. Strawberry, strawberry, strawberry. Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Okay, so I'll let you take over. I got to stare at the light and go strawberry, strawberry, strawberry.
We'll get to these questions that are coming in here. So we have questions that are coming in about approved development or development that's in the pipeline along the south side of Charlottesville, Albemarle County, the Kale Mountain View area. That's a hot topic. We got a car lots question coming in for you.
We like those.
Yeah, we like the car lots question.
You can tell how dynamic Ned is. I'm pretty quiet today.
Ned is very dynamic, I will say that. So how about this one from Dan Pettit? He's a realtor. Will the 6% of the employees keep these people long-term, or will there be a lot of turnover in the future, do you anticipate? He's basically saying the raise. Are you expecting turnover? Is that 6% enough to keep people sticky?
The 6% was what we needed to do, I feel like, to get them right, to get them back on par with, So that's my point from earlier when I said we can't just act like, oh, we gave them a 6% raise, and in a few months in the budget cycle go that, now we don't have to worry about that anymore. No, we got to continue to build on that.
Well, I can add to that because at the commission we do this, and I'm sure at the county do. You take a look at what the market rate is for a similar position out in the private sector, and you're trying to match that number a little bit so you can keep your retention, right? Because you do an analysis of that, correct?
Right. So, I
Yeah.
mean, we have to do, I mean, we're, in the county, we're dealing with retirement issues. We've got folks with, I mean, just Amelia
Yeah.
McCauley the other day, she, 40-plus years of service all with Albemarle County. Phenomenal public servant. Lori Allshouse, who was with our finance team, our Office of Management and Budget, she retired. I mean, that's where it's like, oh, we're losing not just these folks who are incredible people and incredible employees, but we've also lost 40 years of knowledge that goes with that employee. So we have to be ready to make sure that we're getting the next 40-year person through. And if somebody's there for 5 or 8 or 10 years and they don't feel like their wages are where they need to be and they can go elsewhere because these are ambitious people that want to have a good
Sure.
career, well, we need to do what's right to keep them here in Albemarle so that we can, frankly, benefit from their service.
So we can take 3 months down to a normal turnaround
right.
time for a building.
And I think our board does recognize, or else they would not have done this right size mid-budget year. It's, like I said, it's not the norm. It's unusual to do anything of this, something of this substance mid-budget year. But we had to do it, and a lot of that's looking at your employees and going, well, we got to right size this. We got to do what's right by them. And then, like I said, it's going to be our responsibility to continue to build on that as we go through the budget this year.
If you're watching or listening to the show either now or later on, the one thing that Ned said is true as true can be. I've been doing this for 35 years. Watch the budget discussions. That is the most important discussions to watch because it will telltale how the process is going to go, what decisions potentially are going to get made down the line. You know, what is that old thing? Show me the money, follow the money. If you start watching which supervisor is advocating what, and it starts now, right? I mean, we started because the land trust that I chair, we're trying to get money. You know, all these entities are trying to get onto your budget so we can get a little money to do that.
That's right.
Carl Lott's question? Or wherever you want to go?
Yeah, there's a lot. Ned, you're a popular guy here. There's a lot coming in here. So this is
As long as it's not Mrs. Smith wanting to buy a new car.
This is
as
the
much
question.
as I love
well, you want the $6,000 bike. If you want the $6,000 bike, she deserves a car from Car Lots. Is that not fair, Keith? It's the holiday season.
Apparently, you two are teaming up over here.
She deserves the car from Car Lots if you're getting the $6,000 truck. So this is
Who said I was getting it?
Paul, that's true. Paul McCarter is bringing this up. In fact, he's coming on the show on Monday. He is asking about density in the south side of Albemarle County. He is a parent of 2 with kids at Mountain View. He's also a realtor. So this is kind of like a conundrum catch-22 because everyone knows that we're under inventory from a rooftop standpoint in Albemarle. And the catch-22 or the fork in the road is how do we green light additional development while also considering infrastructure needs like schools, for example. And we realized earlier this year that at Mountain View, the 5th grade, the school board was considering taking the 5th grade to middle school.
Right.
Now we have potentially a 5th new development approved in that area that would funnel kids to Mountain View. Anywhere you want to go on this topic? I know this is a conundrum.
Yeah, so, yeah, the basic conundrum is do you wait for infrastructure before you approve growth and development?
Right.
Or do you allow the growth and development and try to get the infrastructure to catch up? Like to Keith's point, those smart scale pieces, kind of wait until you have an application in place because then that helps get the project over there.
It is one of the major criteria.
But if you waited until you had the infrastructure in place, you might not necessarily ever get there. So that, looking at the Rio Point in my area, the neck of the woods, the problem for me was not only did we not have the infrastructure in place to deal with the transportation, it wasn't even on the transportation priorities list at the time.
Correct, yeah.
So when that started to be discussed. Mountain View, they have a placeholder for a second. It's not, there's not I don't think there's a defined location for it, but I know in the school's long-range planning, the long-range plan, they have a placeholder for a second elementary school down there, and have started to talk about that because they see what's going to happen, like as that whole Southwood redevelopment comes online, what that's going to mean. But then it's also what the folks who live there, the Southwood redevelopment when that went through, and there's a lot of pluses and great things about that program, about that redevelopment and the rezoning. But I made a comment during that application that right now, like a transportation there's a failing intersection over there before that development even gets started. And, and nobody was, or at least nobody vocally said, that's a problem why you shouldn't do this rezoning. Where every other rezoning we get those type of conversations. But that's where you had a community to go, we're going to deal with the traffic situation because this development outweighs that concern. And then hopefully we'll get the infrastructure over there to fix that particular issue. But the school one, we need elementary seats are in is a high problem, I think, countywide. Crozet, that's trying to get fixed, right now. Mountain View's the hold, and then there's a hold for elementary school up on the northern feeder pattern as well. But that's 2 brand new schools. We have not built a new school in Albemarle County in a long time. Our approach or our attempt to do it with limited capital monies has been to do expansions, which is what's happening at Crozet. It's happened
Or learning villages.
And then the center model at the high school level. But Mountain View, they've had 2 expansions, I believe, in a short amount of time. So expansion can't continue to be the answer, especially when you drop a huge development like that into that area. So the school division is going to have to figure out priority-wise where that goes. That's up to them. Does a new elementary school in that neck of the woods, does that fall number 1, 2, or 3? I think right now it's maybe 3 on their plan. And then, 5 or 6 months ago, I said we're going to have to look at, to get ahead of the growth, another elementary school up north, and there's some properties a couple properties have been proffered for that, or else we're going to be playing catch up there. So we finally have got to a point with some of these things where you can look to the future and go, we can get there ahead of time. We can get the infrastructure there before, but it moves so fast that you don't know if you're going to be able to do that.
How do you navigate, and I'll get out of your way, how do you navigate decision making as a supervisor when it comes to schools? With all of us understanding, and I hope all of us understand that it's the school board that's calling a lot of shots.
They only hold the purse strings.
You're allocating the money, but it's the school board that's calling the shots. How do you navigate that dance?
So one, your responsibility during the budget, and we have a formula set up. So, basically we've all agreed that that's how it's going to work, and this amount of revenue, we call it the 60-40 split, will go over to the schools. So when we did this revenue adjustment here mid-year, and when we've added the positions and the raise, monies went to the school division, and that was per the formula. So really the only politics that could get involved is if somebody said, I don't like that formula. I don't want to give that 60%, or there's a formula in place, but this extra money's up here now and I don't want that to go over at this point in time.
So is that 60% of your budget or 60% of their budget?
So it's 60% of revenues coming in.
Got
so
it.
if you think of 100% of revenue, now we identify some things, you'll hear us say that's off the top. So we take some things out that have been dedicated to specific things, and then of the remainder, that gets split out 60-40, and then that's what the baseline is for the schools and for us to start talking about.
But it's important to explain that the majority of the school budget does not come from you. It comes from the state. Most folks do not know that.
Yeah.
It comes from the state.
The state, right. But the problem with the state funding, which is what the state did in 2008 and 2009, they started to not do their part.
Correct.
So when the state doesn't do your part, then it forces that responsibility to the locality. So now the locality has to say, we're either going to cut things or we have to take more revenue from the locality. So you guys just go back and look at school board budgets going back to 2009 and 10, when they kept coming over to us with their recommended budget based on what that 60-40 split was. There were times I think at one point the high point was like $6-7 million deficit.
But Ned, how does the state establish how much funds it's giving
Well,
you?
that's based on the
Student
the
count.
composite index.
Composite index, but which is set up by, as Jerry said,
Yeah. Has to do with
student count.
student
So
enrollment.
it's this weird chicken and egg thing, right?
Yeah, because you're basically saying if there's more students, more funding comes in. But if there's more students, schools are crowded.
Well, but they also look at the composite index. It takes into account. All right. Well, let's look at your property values and what
Sure.
the worth or the value of your locality is, and that composite index dictates what you can afford to do.
Sure.
So the thing, I hate to bring it up because it's always a contentious conversation, but over the years we've talked about, of course, our revenue sharing with the city. Well, the revenue monies that get sent over to the city doesn't get accounted for in our composite index. So the monies that go over $18 million or $15 million, and it changes year
So
to year.
it's hurting you.
So that money, the state acts like that money's in our coffers.
Yeah.
And they're right, because they're saying to us, you put a program in place to send that money to the city. That's your money, right? So the fact that, and there have been times in the county side where the school board and county officials have been like, well, the state should make that adjustment because
Subtract
that money, and so that our affordability doesn't take that money into account. And there's other things that get factored in there. But it makes you look like you can afford more than you can because that money is not our money once we send it over to the
That's
city.
a really unique scenario within the state.
There's only one or two. There's not many.
There's not more. So it's less than one handful worth of folks that are doing it. But it's important. The reason I brought that up because Nelson County has got the opposite. It is losing
That's right.
children. Its composite index is dropping. It's receiving less money from the state. Now they have I think a little bit of budget surplus, so they kind of have some room to help over that way.
And and it's not always one-sided where it always hurts Albemarle. It goes back and forth. There are some years where the composite index plays in where the schools in Charlottesville can take a hit, and the schools in Albemarle, it's not a consistent, somebody's getting a negative impact here. So that can vary with the composite index.
But these things are, and then thank you for doing this, Ned. These things are super complicated.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it digestible and understandable. But at a high level, this is very chicken and egg kind of stuff. So at one end, we're 5.5 million new construction units short as we stand in the country right now. In the state, we're several $100,000 short of affordable housing units. I'm going to hopefully get to this UVA conversation because 2 of these parcels are in your county, which means they're probably going to come see you. And how is that process going to work and look? And is this
Time frame.
Is this really going to happen?
Yeah.
Right?
Does this kick the can down the road?
Well, in full disclosure, I'm on the community engagement team for that. So, just to get out there in the conversation. But it's this. If this stuff was simple, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation about that. Because is development good? Is development bad? Yeah. Is adding kids to the school good? Bad? And it's this very complicated formula that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, like you had asked, like how do you navigate the supervisors to the schools? Well, we know our responsibility. We have, if we need to increase monies to offset something that the state maybe didn't do, then that can become a local budget discussion. And that's where I say, well, okay, if we haven't had conversations, the board maybe 5-6 years ago were having those type of conversations, and you had people saying they supported education but weren't interested in sending any additional monies over. So that's
that goes back to watch the budget discussion.
Now the other area, like you said, well, how do you navigate that you can't, because you're a supervisor and the school board makes that decision? Well, I know as a former school board member, I know exactly what their responsibilities are and what they've been elected to do. But I'm a citizen and I'm a parent with kids in the schools. So I can voice whatever I want to voice from that standpoint. So if I have an opinion on anything like that, I mean, obviously I'm going to do it the correct way. I don't want to misuse my position as supervisor to do that. But I love the fact that I can go into, the schools where my kids are, and that's Maggie's dad, that's AJ's dad, Caitlin's graduated, that's Caitlin's dad, that's not, the
Supervisor Galloway.
Yeah. So, it's nice that relationship is, no, that's a parent coming in. And if I say anything or do anything about that's the parent advocating for his children.
See, I mean, this is what, and you don't have an easy job. Okay, it's like
Nobody that sits in that position has an easy
Right,
job.
right. So here, think about the balancing act for the viewers and listeners. And Gwendolyn, Cassidy, we'll get to your questions here. You approve additional development, and the jurisdiction reaps benefits from it from a real estate tax standpoint, right? That's going to go into the coffers. That's going to give the jurisdiction more money that it can use to operate. Let's cut to the chase. The $400 million budget, it's over $400 million now, is going to get more and more expensive. It's not going to get more affordable to run Albemarle County as the years go on.
But nothing is.
Not exactly. That's my point.
Nothing is.
And the catch-22 is if we approve more development, then the infrastructure is taxed even more and stretched even more. So it's like you're almost like having to figure out the best way to tread water.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to build up a wall and tell people they can't come here? So the idea is that, all right, we've got growth, we've got a plan that we're trying to follow, we have strategic priorities, you've got 6 supervisors that say, this is what I think and feel about all of this, and we have to make the best decision we can based on
That's why
that.
the strategic plan process is so important.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the vision. That tackles these high-level topics. Look, no matter what decision you make, 50% of the people are going to love it and 50% of the people are not, right? So your job is obviously to look at the bigger picture and try to do the best for the jurisdiction and the region all the way around. But to answer your question, I mean, I just ran some quick numbers in Albemarle County, and I just took 2008 versus 2001 and the real estate side of things. And just to take like single-family detached, I just picked that apart. In Albemarle County in 2018, we had 1,140. In 2021, we had 1,352. These were transactions, number of transactions, and the difference between the two was the new construction, because these include new construction. So we're growing. We're going to continue to grow. I think it's going to happen regardless. The question becomes is how can we I have to choose my words carefully. I'm using one of Jerry Miller's terms of carefully. We have to manage, maybe that's the right choice of words, to go through this. But UVA is trying to put up 1,000 to 1,500 units. One of them is going to be on North Fork, which is 29 North. It's a large parcel of land. They're going to be sending out these RFPs or RFQs, depending on who you talk to, what terminology they're going to use. There's another one that is just in Albemarle County, right across from Fontaine Fire Station. Both of them, best as I know the Norfolk one is owned by the foundation. I'm pretty sure the Fontaine Avenue one is owned by the foundation. That means they're going to come to you. I mean, it's going to be a rezoning on this end of it. So I know a little bit inside ball on it, but what's your position as a Albemarle County Board of Supervisors chairman, soon to wrap up your year? You're going to basically have two of the three projects in your jurisdictions. What do you from your perspective, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I'm glad that they've identified the properties now so that we can start thinking about how we feel about that, right? So before it was like, oh, where's it going to be? I mean, now, if you knew where they owned the land, you kind of had an idea of where it would probably pop up.
This is not a big surprise for many people.
But we're not going to, we have all in the region said affordable housing is something we're going to go after. And UVA's part is saying we're going to provide land, which what's the biggest cost prohibitor to affordable housing is the cost of the land. So now they've stepped up and said we're going to provide that land. Everybody thinks Albemarle County has land. We don't have a lot of land to be able to do this. So UVA does, and they're doing that. So it'll then be contingent on developers to bring projects forward, understanding the county in which they're going to develop. And, yes, it's going to be on our mind that what this project's designed to do in terms of its affordable housing vision, but when it comes to the Board of Supervisors, it really will not be any different than any other application, because we have to look at the impacts, we have to look at the location, and we'll make decisions based on that.
And I agree with that 110%. But it's actually two visions now, right? So there's the UVA vision, and then there's the comprehensive plan. And will the two of them sync together? Will it be separated?
Well,
all the stuff we do not know.
It's
at the
three
moment.
visions, and it's Albemarle County residents' expectations.
Correct.
Well, the housing Albemarle plan is what we're going to be looking to, when these projects come forward, how does it align with that housing plan? This was one of my issues Wednesday night with the Rio Point. Because the application began its process prior to housing Albemarle, it was basically still going under the old housing plan.
Well, it has to, because just a little technical end of it, if that application, once it gets submitted, whatever is the rules and regulations and plans at that time, it must comply to.
Sure, but if somebody wants to do something or
Yeah.
aspire beyond, they have
that's
the
a different
ability to do
story.
that.
Correct, yeah.
But we passed that plan back in June, and every plan that comes before me now, I'm thinking of that, not the old plan, because the old plan didn't work for us. If it worked for us, we wouldn't have affordable housing crisis in this.
Well, I mean, let's put a fine point to it. The old plan had you put in affordable housing. If I was a developer, put in affordable housing, and I put it on the market for 90 days, and I didn't find the
Or
buyer.
kick money to a proffer coffer.
It wasn't even proffer. You could pay into it.
Yeah.
You can pay into it, which was a ridiculously low number at that particular time. So that's all gone away, and you need to produce it, which brings me back to this conversation with UVA. So I want to be clear. They're not giving the land away.
It's a land lease. Yeah.
They're leasing it.
So to protect it, yeah.
Well, which is going to make it complicated, particularly in the ownership model scenario, which as the land trust, we're designed to help that. So that's hopefully we'll be in the conversations for that. But they're not giving the land away. They are signing a long-term lease on it, on the land.
And that's going to help us get to a more long-term affordability model than the current or the old housing plan, like the Rio Point affordable units. If they're not gone to affordable folks in the 90-day period, they'll go to regular market rate.
Yeah.
And they're only guaranteed for the 10 years.
Yeah.
So in 10 years, whatever was affordable in there won't necessarily, that's why it hasn't worked for us. So this new model, this is going to be there, is going to allow us to get past that 10-year mark. And the work of the Regional Housing Partnership, the reason, I don't want to blame developers or the density bonus for, that's the reason we have this crisis. But, 4 years ago, where does a person looking for affordable units go to find those affordable units? If they don't have a connection in a Department of Social Services, or they don't know where to go look, like we've got the Porch Light, where you can now go and find all these affordable units through the Regional Housing
So that's a
Partnership.
website that the Regional Housing Partnership
it was
created.
the developers didn't know how to find the people to get them into the units, and the people looking for those units didn't necessarily know how to find those units, so you had a disconnect. So working on
So that was one of the
piece-
huge successes of the Regional Housing
Right.
Partnership, and it's something that Ned and I pushed to go ahead and have a affordable housing website source so folks can marry a provider with a tenant.
Now, and real fast, let me return you the question about, when I was kind of flip and said, well, we can't build up a wall and not have anybody come in.
Well, you can't.
But we have tried to say, though, in Albemarle, like if you play this out, like if Rio Point gets denied and that project builds out by right, so that's R4, and with bonus density, they said that could get to about 190 units. It would basically look like Dunlora, so a house on a quarter-acre lot. And, so that builds out to 190. The apartments do have lower impact on schools. Housing developments have a higher impact on schools. So there's still impacts even if it builds out by right. But if you allow that to build out by right, and they've put 380 units in on the apartments, or roughly in that range, so that's what, 180 some difference to the by right, just talking units to units? Well, those 180 units, based on what the private area is seeing to meet the demand, has to go somewhere else. And that's why we're saying in that 5% of development area, that's where we want the highest density, so that when you go out into the rural area, you're not getting, one home per quarter acre lot in places where you just want open land. And that is a strategy, that is a policy, that is a vision in Albemarle County that is tried and true. And if anybody ever came along saying they'd like to expand that 5% and dig into that rural area, that would be a...
Yeah, that's a hot topic. That's a topic for another show. How long is the UVA land lease?
So all this we don't know yet. My suspicion is that it'll be probably close to like the land trust is 90 to 100. It's going to have to be substantially long because they're going to be building on it. I don't think they haven't fully flushed this out yet. Exactly how.
What happens when the land lease runs out? What happens when the lease runs out?
Well, I can tell you what happens with the land trust land lease. It just automatically gets renewed. So
Yeah.
most people do not know.
Well, what happens when UVA's lease runs out?
Well, what most people, we don't know this because we haven't seen it. They haven't flushed it out. But most people do not know. Most post offices are on 99-year land leases. The post office does not own the land that they sit under. So it's not an uncommon thing. But I think the real conversation about the North Fork project is, and my hope is, and I'll have some influence hopefully in the conversation on it, it should be that mixed use. It should be that mixed income. It should be a percentage of ownership, a percentage of rentals and different income levels ranging from 30 or below that up to 80% AMI. I can tell you the other parcels they will have to be rental environments. And then that happens is whatever the land lease is, it becomes a negotiation between UVA and whoever the development partner is going to ultimately.
So you're basically saying the development partner is going to build the infrastructure, and then they're going to have to do some kind of rev share when the lease runs out, and figure out who's going to maintain ownership of the bricks and sticks and roofs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I think from what I can share.
But I know this is a dance that you're navigating delicately.
I'm dancing a dance.
He dances well.
He does dance well. He has that skill set.
How do you know?
I think he interacts with them all the time.
Speaking metaphorically.
I thought what we did in Norfolk is supposed to stay there.
Metaphorically, you dance very well.
About that.
I don't want to know. I'm trying to have some fun.
I
guys.
know you are.
This is getting to know. We got to have some fun. Are we going to have fun today?
Where's my car lots question?
You want the car lots question? You know what? We love Ned here. Here's the car lots question. This is from DP. What is the average miles driven on cars that you own on your lots?
Ooh.
And how many years do you think people are keeping their cars now? Is it changing due to the pandemic?
And just before you answer that, just to add to that, on the real estate side, people are staying in their homes much longer. They're staying in their homes they used to be between 5 to 6 years. Now they're between 8 to 10 years.
Well, if we can't solve this chip shortage issue, people are going to be keeping their cars a hell of a lot longer too.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of newer. I mean, we've got the whole range. So we've got 2-year-old vehicles, because you got to know that we're sourcing from entities that are getting rid of cars for whatever reason. And the local person that's going to sell their car to us, it's one of two things usually. It's time for a new car. It's 8-10-year-old car that they want to offload and they want to upgrade, or 5 to 10 years roughly. If you tend to be a business entity that's consigning a car, they bring it to us for the same reason. Otherwise, they just have to go to auction. For them, that tends to be the newer car, because businesses tend to only own the cars within the warranty period. So then they'll go and recycle their fleet to get the new car, and then you have this 3 to 5-year-old car coming out from that particular market. So the 3 to 5-year cars could be any. It's pretty standard with what you would see anywhere else. Average of 12 to 15,000 miles a year on a car. I think the best ones, obviously, that everybody's looking for is that person that's maybe owned the car for 6, 7, 8 years.
Garage kept it the whole
drove
time.
6,000 miles a year in Charlottesville.
Our grandmas. Yeah.
So,
but don't you have like a range of years?
no, the range, at any given time, that's what I was saying. Sometimes some of the older models tend to be the ones from the actual local person that's coming in, because they've owned their car for 4 to 6 years, and now they're going to come out of it. And those honestly, through all of car lots nationwide, end up being the fastest ones that go, because if you've kept a car that long, you've done all the right things, and it's something that's going to be a great vehicle for the next owner. So
to go back to my dance on the UVA thing.
Kelsey's got a question, a car lots question too.
All right, well then I'll continue to shut up.
Kelsey Klein says, I live in Supervisor Galloway's district. I got a question for him about his business. How many electric vehicles are on site at car lots, not only at his spot, but across all 30 locations?
Oh, I don't know the answer across all 30. The one we had has sold. They don't tend to last very long.
And they're so new, it can't be that deep.
Well,
From an inventory
what I've found are people that buy that electric vehicle,
Hold 'em.
they tend to hold them. I mean, it does cost you more to acquire it up front. So any car that sometimes like hybrids and like when you see a Prius come in, they tend to have a lot of miles on them. Well, of course they do, because they get 50 miles to the gallon.
And to get the ROI on the car, they have to drive it longer because it costs more up front.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So we usually will have, I would imagine in some of our larger markets, like we've got San Antonio, we got Chicago. I'm sure they've got a handful, but I haven't looked recently to see what the other inventory is in those locations. But between Tesla and like a Chevy Bolt and things like that, I'm sure we've got a handful out there. But it never reaches but a certain percentage of your total inventory, because there's fewer of them out there, and people keep them. So
Less than 10% of market share is EVs nationally. When do you think that's going to tip where we'll see more EVs than gas-powered?
Probably doing what like Mercedes has said. I forget the time frame they said, but they were like everything's going to be electric vehicle by a certain time frame. Honda did this on backup cameras. I mean, years before, they saw where the industry was going. It was going to be required. They went there first. They had all that technology in there, and then it became standard across the whole industry. So, as more manufacturers go, we're going electric, then it'll start to shift where you just have.
Hasn't Ford said the same thing? Aren't they a
lot of them said it.
Magic date out there that they're gonna go all to electric? Which at some point in time we got to have that conversation.
I'm pretty sure, I'll Google this. I'm pretty sure they're not developing any other that aren't electric.
Correct.
Yeah,
so everything
that's what they've said.
Correct. Yeah. So everything that I've seen anyway going forward.
And the thing about electric is,
what about the battery?
For the driving geeks out there, because you think of electric, it's just about economy and fuel efficiency and all that. But the BMW, the little i3 that they made back in my BMW days, so this is back in 2013, there's the i8, which is the impressive sport car. But then they had this little hatchback-looking thing that was an i3. And it's
wheels are
like,
about 2 inches wide.
When you drive an electric vehicle, that one especially, it was like driving a golf cart. You push down, and it goes, and you let off, and it slows down. You don't really have to. I mean, there's a brake there, so if you have to stop fast, you can do it. But if you let off the pedal, you stop. Well, that little i3 was, I think, if I remember correctly, was the fastest BMW from 0 to 45 that was ever on the road at the time, because it's instant power. So if you're one of those, I like to get off the line fast.
You got the giddy up right away.
Electric vehicle is your way to go.
I know the third fastest production car is electric. I believe that's the Audi.
Mm-hmm.
But the question on that is what's going to happen to all the batteries when they cycle out?
Well,
The real question is this. What happens if everybody on the block or on the street has EV-powered vehicles, and can the grid support that kind of usage?
That is why you have Segura Solar put solar on your roof, like the Smiths are doing in the beginning of January, and we're putting an EV plug in there because I've got my eye on either the Ford Lightning pickup truck or the new Hummer. And Mrs. Smith will probably let me do the.
Let's get the $6,000 e-bike.
Judas rolling his eyes over there. You ain't getting the Hummer, dude. You're not getting the Hummer. We all know here.
This has not been a fun show for me today. I'm just saying. I came in here looking to have some fun, and it's not a fun show for me. Hold on, let's ask Mr. Predicto.
Crystal ball camera, Judah Wickower.
Yeah. Let's. Will Mr. Smith get a new bike for Christmas? Mr. Predicto. I think it's going to answer another question. No, I had a yes there for a minute.
How about this one? How do you navigate the dance of rezoning and people from a property rights standpoint? And this is someone from your district here saying, look, when I buy a home, I'm counting on the zoning around me to remain the same. And if zoning changes happen, That's undoubtedly going to impact prices, traffic, schools, and a number of other things. How do you navigate that dance?
Yeah, that's what we navigate every time these applications become in force. What it actually boils down to are the supervisors try to address the impacts that such a change brings. And, it goes earlier with our conversation about, well, do you do the infrastructure first and then allow development, or you
That's
just
so
try
hard.
to get the infrastructure to go? And that there's no right answer to that. You just have to do the best you can. So it's the same thing when you go, okay, well, here's a property that's been, zoned this particular way, and if you move in there, you're thinking, well, if it develops, it'll only develop based on that current zoning. And then when that changes and you allow that upzoning, the supervisors have to go, what impacts does that create? And then we try to use our best judgment to go, have those been addressed satisfactorily to allow that to happen? And that, that's the answer. And some people are happy with our decision. Some people are some agree that with us, whether or not something's been satisfactorily addressed or not, and others have not. So, a lot of it is subjective at the end of the day. But this, when I was on your show the last time, we were still before the election, and the comment I've made about watching your supervisor during budget time, but I had made the point there in that last show about, Ned, as an elected official running for office, has an opinion and a way that he thinks about things. And what I often say when I'm asking people to vote for me is, if you agree with my views, what I've stated are my views, and you agree with what I've stated as my process to make a decision, then please vote for me. So that's the only way I can tell somebody, okay, when a development application comes before me, how I'm going to go about the consideration. And that's why paying attention during election time, listening to supervisors, it's hard when there's not opposition like we went through this fall, to hear what those values and those viewpoints and those process points are. But if you're paying attention during budget time, you'll see a supervisor really kind of working and operating, and you can learn from that to see, well, what would they say when this application? We do so many things that don't rise to the level of, a community getting up in arms, whether it's for or against something. So development, these rezoning applications tend to get a lot of attention. But a lot of the substance to learn what your supervisor is all about happens in that kind of mundane meeting where all this other stuff plays out. And if you're not listening to that, it's difficult to go, well, how does that guy figure out how he's going to vote on a development application?
How about this one from Gwendolyn? Will you encourage fit well, well-built, or LEED accredited standards in the new construction to accommodate all children of Albemarle, or is it primarily just the bottom line? What about solar installations so schools can pay for all energy needs?
So solar installation at schools, is that what? We have solar facilities on some of our schools now. In fact, Albemarle back, I can't remember if that was my last year, second to last year on the school board, was the first school division in the Commonwealth to go to the lease agreement that we had to put solar on the buildings. And that stemmed from some community advocacy here in Albemarle, some students. Avery, I think that, came to the school board, was advocating for that, and there was opportunities that came to be, and that's what really got us started off on putting solar facilities on our buildings. The school division really, Dr. Moran back in the 2011, 12, 13, they started doing a lot of things to go to better, I'm missing the language here, but they were installing different type of lighting, they were installing different type of plumbing fixtures and things like that long ago. So they should be ahead of the curve.
It's called
where
environmental engineering.
They're actually coming up on a 10-year cycle where their maintenance now is taking care of the things that they implemented a long time ago. Requiring that in the private development world, I think, is a different conversation.
It is.
But in the schools facility, and I think in the county, yes, you've got, when you look at our strategic plan, the number one priority that stands up there right now is our climate action plan that we just extended for a third year. So you have a board right now that's supportive of, and regardless of what we talk about, some way or fashion, climate action plan usually finds its way into the conversation.
So on the private sector side, right, on the regular, almost every conversation.
You're very good in this setting. You're very good in this setting.
Well, thank you for that. It's the coffee.
It's the coffee from Shenandoah Joe.
He's always selling. He's always selling.
I'm always selling. Look, and so this is why we did Coffee with the Candidates. Jerry and I invited you before it got elected because we realized, I realized that we needed to get out there and have a conversation, and you graciously agreed to come in today, and you're going to graciously agree to come on regularly. We'll end up with a fourth seat this time hopefully from different jurisdictions.
I know who I want in that fourth seat the next time.
Who's that?
And who's that?
That's Neil. Neil.
Yeah. I'll tag Neil right now.
Well, Neil had his full knee replacement yesterday, so
We're planning that.
Let me give him. We'll send out good wishes, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
good
Okay,
wishes.
I'll tag him right now.
So this is why we do.
We should get his crystal ball predictions too.
We
Supervisor
will.
Galloway. We got to get the crystal ball in front of him. He likes to have fun. I can tell.
Neil, what was his crystal ball prediction? He had one for some. I forget when he was on here with Sean the last time, but that's right.
Well, I think his crystal ball prediction was a bet with Smith that he ended up winning a bottle of bourbon.
Did you notice I was very quiet?
Yeah, I didn't say anything, and Neil won.
It cost me a little. So if anybody would watch our Tuesday show and our versus this show, I'm extremely quiet today because I just want to learn and I just wanted to listen and move forward. But this is very this is big stuff. These questions about how do you navigate development? How do you try to walk that walk right down that middle line and try to get everything moving? It's just a super difficult conversation to have because it impacts so many people in so many different circumstances. But the reality of it is, I was thinking as you were talking, Ned, so back in the day when one used to actually go to a movie, right? And you would have this thing that comes across of what happens if you don't advertise, right? Nothing, right? So the reality, I know this much, if we don't figure out how to increase inventory, which is new construction, everything is going to increase in price, very similar to Jerry's prediction that it's going to become super wealthy. The rubber band is going to go out. You're going to sell more cars because people are going to need to be driving instead of a half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour to come into work. So this is just a difficult topic to do it, and the only way I know how to tackle this is what exactly we're doing right now. It's just have a conversation. It's exactly why I made the motion to create the regional housing partnership on that end. It's to put everybody in a room and have this discussion. Please be engaged. If you're listening or watching right now, there's ways to do it. Offer your opinion on the way we're going to do it on these projects coming forward.
I have a personal question for Supervisor Galloway. How do you manage your commitment?
You're touching your crystal ball.
I'm not supposed to touch it. You're right. I apologize. I've been chastised for touching
We've been told very clearly it's 2 hands over the top.
And we're going to slide that. We've ordered. Keith generously has ordered 2 more crystal balls and a smoke machine.
2 smoke machines.
Yeah, 2 smoke machines. But what we're going to do is
today's been way too serious.
Since Amazon, since it hasn't been delivered from the local store yet, Keith, we're going to pass the ball on to
You mean
Supervisor
the local
Galloway.
Amazon store?
Yeah. You're not supposed to say that.
Damn it.
This is the question I have for him. How do you manage your commitment to the Rio district versus the commitment to Albemarle County in totality?
Good question.
Well, I mean, you have your. So the strategic plan, the comprehensive plan, all of the things that drive kind of the big picture things are county based. You can't look at our strategic plan or our comprehensive plan. Well, I mean, there's
because there isn't a comprehensive plan for your district.
For my district,
How about maybe commitment to voters versus commitment to Albemarle County?
So, so I'll break it down. So obviously if it's, what's the best way to attack this question? So when an email comes into the board, the general concept or the agreement among the supervisors is we figure out, usually it's identified where they live, and then that supervisor will respond back to that particular person if they're in their district. And it's very similar in that regard. So my constituent service, I'll help anybody in the county. Sometimes people don't know exactly what district they're in or they're having trouble, and we'll kind of cross paths or get them to their supervisor. But for the most part, your constituent service is defined by your district boundary. And obviously, I go to my district and I look at traffic things and infrastructure pieces and what are the schools looking like and what, all of that I take into account for my district. Then the trick is going, all right, in the bigger picture of the county, the bigger vision, strategic plan of the county, how do I get the district things to fit in and tie a thread to our strategic plan? So, affordable housing right now is a big piece of that. So I made my comments the other evening about this particular one. I would have rather seen it aspire to the new housing Albemarle policy. So that's taking a Rio-specific piece and attaching it to something that's bigger that attaches the whole county. And then if it's county-wide and it's somewhere else, it's a different district. Oftentimes, we listen very carefully to whoever the supervisor is representing that district. We put it's on them to represent what they're hearing from their district when we talk about considering impacts and all of that. And then you go back to your strategic plan and your own values and you say, well, what do I think is best for the county at large? So for me, just as a strategy, if I see something that I go, you know what, the Rio district needs this, or this is an issue in the Rio district, and if I got to get 3 others on board with me to go there, well, then I have to figure out how does that fit into the bigger picture of the whole county and why it's of value. And there have been projects and times when I've done that, and that's where you politic. You have to get other people to agree and support you for that, and because I can't do anything alone as a supervisor. But if I need to get a project done, or if it's going to rise to the level of getting monies programmed to it, or staffing to go to it, then you always need the board to sign off. And then you just have to go make your case and persuade other people to do it.
Because we really saw that with 2 decisions over the last, say, 60 days. The decision with, what's it called, Rio Point, where you voted no, right? Mm-hmm. And we also saw that with Supervisor Lepisto Kirtley with the RST development, which was in her district, and she voted no. Mm-hmm. So I know this is not an easy job for you, but I was impressed with your commitment to the district and understanding the nuanced elements of it, where your fellow supervisors were perhaps voting in Albemarle County from totality standpoint, where you were considering the micro aspects and the challenges that it impacted Rio District.
Yeah, that's
Is that fair?
That's fair. When a supervisor votes no, and it's not in the majority opinion, then the fact that people can get in there and really pay attention to why they do that, I think is important. You'll learn a lot about your supervisor in that situation too. I mean, for me, the process the other night was, when that application first came before us, we didn't have a railroad corridor study, we didn't have this roundabout project in place, and housing Albemarle wasn't in place. So for me, I think they quoted me in the Daily Progress and said, in my perfect world, I would have liked the corridor study to be completed. Housing Albemarle is now in line. I would love for that incentive program to be done, actually in place in it. And then because the fact that those 2 things are in place and the Smart Scale application is now a funded project at that intersection, let's run that back through the normal process that it gets to the board through the Planning Commission. Now, I did not have, it would have taken a board, 4 people to say yes to allow that process to go, and I already knew this project had 3 yes votes, so right. It was a tough situation to be in. But that's why I voted the way that I did, because I felt there is more information here that has not yet been considered, and we should, in fact, consider that.
So I promised you to get you out at 11:30. That was 10 minutes ago that I lied.
I'm good.
Should we, let's have some fun with the crystal balls.
I want to have fun, but...
I mean, he's got great hair, too. I'm hesitant to ask if you want to wear the...
Oh, no. Should we talk about the hair story? We are not going to talk about the hair story.
The magic wand, Supervisor Galloway, over here.
I don't know if I could get any.
Should I tell the story about we were on the rooftop and the hair...
You've told that story.
Yeah. Our hair got blown.
The wind, I have to be into the wind, going this way.
You have 3 guys that are very concerned about their hair on this set right here. I have some Tresemme number 4 hairspray over here if you need it.
They did
you have
the
to watch the Tuesday show. He literally took a mirror.
Would you like the hairspray?
They did the year-end
He'll do
You
it.
get the hairspray, Judah.
No, don't get the hairspray.
We don't need the hairspray?
I'm still the executive producer.
Okay, we don't need the hairspray.
So the year in review, they had a shot
anyway.
at one of the economic development programs, and they did the video, and they had all this. But they had one shot where we were sitting, and it was from behind, And I was sitting there looking at the guy sitting in my seat where I thought I was, and I was like, who's the bald guy sitting in that seat? Because this is really grown, so I don't usually like any photography from this angle. It's like, man, how did that make it into
That's why the cameras are in front of you, man.
So
They're in front of you.
when I sat in the back of Anthony Harrell's, or stood in the back of Anthony Harrell's presentation, and I was looking for him, and I said, "Oh, there he is!" He was up front. I saw the little
Even
spot.
the person that cuts my hair knows not to do the whole mirror thing at the end.
It's a thing. People do not understand how
It's
much
a
of a
thing.
thing this
It is a thing.
is. Look, I wanted.
You're very good in this setting now.
We love to do the Batman and Robin, and I really, we have 3 rules here, and one of them is to have fun. But I really wanted to give you an opportunity to do what you do well and communicate out to the folks that are listening and watching at your year end and what you're going forward. I have like 4 super high level topics that I don't think we're going to get to today. One is, are we going, how do we feel about going from 6 to 7 districts? Because that's coming before you. Broadband, we talked about Southern Albemarle, and for those who are listening.
It's 75 million? Is that what it was?
It's, I'll tell you, hold on, right here, I got it here somewhere on a piece of paper. You keep
And
on talking.
we haven't even had a chance to talk about free bus rides, free fare with Kat.
Well, so that was the next.
That's big news.
Transportation, that was going to be, I've got Diantha coming in, and Ted, what's the gentleman's that took over Jaunt, his first name is, I can't remember his name, but
Well, if
Jerry's
you
fingers
any
will-
transportation, Diantha will.
Well, Diantha's
crush
coming
it.
on
So
January
you're
7th.
in good hands to
to
get all
go
that
ahead
information.
to go ahead and do this thing. And in my myriad of papers here, I'll have that number.
Ted
for,
Reek.
There you go, Ted. But the point is, I wanted to get the broadband on Southern Albemarle. So the folks who are listening to this, that's in the Scottsville area, right? So 5th Street South. So if you would go ahead and Google it, you'll kind of get an idea where we are. Where are we going to get broadband there? The missing middle, right? Is that something that we're going to start moving into a comprehensive plan, a little bit more robust in the comprehensive plan? Are we going to move into a zoning rewrite to match that? So these are some high level stuff which we're not going to get to today. But please,
Real
we're
quick,
not done for the show because we're going to have some fun.
We've moved dollars to broadband. So our broadband authority, there have been monies that freed up because of, and to match some money that's coming down, but some ARPA money that we said, well, let's direct that to broadband to help with that effort. You have a total board on committed to making sure the broadband plan plays out. What was the other one?
I had it from missing middle, broadband.
I think the missing middle.
We should
will
get your take
definitely-
on the Cat.
And the zoning
Cat?
for
Yeah.
the missing middle conversation, and then will the zoning happen as part of the comprehensive plan? That has been a conversation that's been ongoing with the board.
79, I just found the right piece of paper. $79 million.
So yes, I think the middle density conversation will happen during the comprehensive plan conversation, and getting the zoning to parallel with what our plan says has been discussed multiple times, and that's going to continue to be figured out as well as we do this next.
So this
plan
CAT
update.
conversation, this joint conversation, and the conversation we're going to have with Diantha and Ted, I want to rally back to the UVA thing, because I'll tell you, my biggest struggle with the North Fork parcel from UVA is transportation. That's way outside of the public transportation nodes, right?
Well,
And
yes.
how is that all going to work?
Transit-wise, yes, but they've had a shuttle that have run up and down from up there. So there's other things that
Yeah,
we've
but Ned,
done
if they're going to build
piloted.
500
Well,
or 1,000 units,
then we got to figure out the transit situation in the county, which
or is that part of the RFP
There's
process?
2 studies going on right now that are hopefully going to get at that. But there are plenty of people that live up the 29 North Corridor that the transit, and this isn't CAT's fault. How do you put in a
Bus stop.
well, even what's the word I'm looking for? A specific line.
Route.
Route, you put in stop-start routes like that in that type of, it's not a gridded neighborhood. You got a major throughway and you got all these neighborhood kind of roads. So we have to figure out, how does transit work given the definite situation out there. So for folks that want to go to Target at Hollymead and they're down on Hydraulic Road, how do you get a bus out to there? And how does that work? Is that a direct route? Or
And how do
is
you
that,
afford it?
Or is that a on-demand type of
Or
transit?
how do you justify it? And how do you justify it when fare count is down significantly? And it's proven that people aren't using public transportation as much, especially during the pandemic, because people are fearful to get in a tin can with bad ventilation with strangers.
And it would be a really neat study what somebody would do, or figure out. So on the affordable housing end of it, how many of those folks are actually working from home, and how much of those folks are actually going someplace to work? Because we've got this hybrid going on, right? And it's not going to change, right? We're for sure there's this work from home. It's just not going to go away. It's going to stay. But so now if we're putting 1,000 units or 500 units or whatever it is out in Norfolk, and these folks are traveling into the city, I mean, that whole transportation component is a little troublesome for me. How is that going to work?
I just don't know if direct for the county. I just don't know if there are some stops that work pretty well, some routes that are working very well, but for the bigger picture to get people to take advantage of it, it has to be convenient, and it has to work. You can't get
and consistent.
It can't take you 45 minutes to get somewhere. I've got folks that live in Woodbrook over on 29 North, who walking over to Kroger is
You're playing Frogger.
What are you going to do? Get into a dead sprint with all those lanes of traffic? So
Right.
if there was some transit opportunity to allow people to go from there to there without getting in their car, helps with the traffic situation and it makes their life convenient. But there's no direct route that's going to do that. So that's why I'm thinking like an on-demand type thing where,
So that's where the partnership with Joint would work, because they are doing on-demand.
Right. So if you got 10 or 20 people, they maybe all can go to the school there or find a common area Woodbrook, jump on over there, it hits some local spots. Next thing you know, you got some cars off the road.
You know what would be a fun show to do? That we spitball a actual verbal, what does a development look like? We're all developers. What is my proposal going to look like to submit to UVA? Because it's going to have a component of traffic. How are we going to solve that particular issue? That'd be a lot of fun, just, spitball.
And are we even bullish on the future of public transportation?
Well, I mean, again, it
Well,
has to work.
That's the reason I was asking, if we're doing affordable at 30%, 40% AMI, are those folks traveling? Are those folks working from home? Because if you find out that they're working from home, then your concept of do we even need to increase it, I think you'll find.
I mean, because there's a lot of KPIs here. Fare revenue is down.
Yeah.
Pandemic has not made public transportation more popular.
Sure.
People can work from home in a hybrid setting now. You have Uber and rideshare that is way more approachable than it was 10 years ago.
But why does that work? Uber works because you can have it there within minutes, you can get to where you want to go, and you don't have to mess with driving. And it's very convenient.
Yeah,
And you have
convenience,
to pay
better
for
word.
it.
I'll tell you how.
Like on Rio Road, I've got a bus stop, and people were saying that during the Rio Point. Well, it's on a major direct transit route, but if it's raining, you're not waiting on a bus on Rio Road.
Right.
There's not a single stop. There are poles standing. It's a pole. That's the bus stop.
Well, it's similar to the train that goes from Lynchburg, the Northeast Corridor, that goes up to Boston, right? Yona was on that train to go up to last weekend to visit the grandbabies. Plane was packed. The train was packed. There's 2 trains. We've got a network going back and forth, and oh, by the way, it was $500 for a round trip ticket, which is not cheap.
That's absurd.
Which is not cheap.
Yeah. Plane ticket would have been less.
Yeah, but from a perspective of how you get from JFK
that's a
LaGuardia
problem.
up there, the Uber cost would be ridiculously expensive. The point is another train needs to be added, right? So I think what you're trying to say, I've got a route here, I've got one bus. Is there enough buses there? And that conversation is similar to this development conversation we just had, right? It's a chicken and the egg. What comes first? Do we buy buses and put them on there and hope people get on them, or do we wait for the demand to do it? These are difficult
And
conversations.
you can also make a legitimate argument that Albemarle County is getting way wealthier, and that public transportation may not be as prioritized with residents and voters as we need.
I think if convenience works, if it's convenient for folks,
Then it
I think
becomes popular again.
They use it.
Yeah.
Attached product between 2018 and 2021 went up $57,000. So it used to be in
Townhomes and
townhomes.
Condos?
And well,
Yeah.
we're not condos. I did do
Okay.
condos in it because condos are different ownership structure. These are, duplexes, triplexes, that kind of thing, which we would think is the most reasonable price. In 2018, there was 524 built, 7 days on market. The median sales price was $289. This includes new construction, by the way, which we normally don't do on the show. 2021 was 602, 4 days on the market, 347. So that went up 57,000. Very interesting. The single-family detached went up 68,000. So that's pretty darn close to that end of it. So I just wanted to kind of share that a little bit, that it is getting more expensive, and we need to figure out a way to kind of get this a little balanced.
I would love to see the very approachable and super cool Ned Galloway with the crystal ball in front of him and potentially a magic wand.
I don't know if the camera.
Judah, how are we going to make this happen here with the crystal ball?
I think we probably got to turn that camera a little bit, right?
Yeah, Judah's gonna. This is where we see Judah's value here on the fly. We're putting him in a spot.
We're good. You hold the wand.
And wait, you sure you don't want the hat, Ned?
No hat.
No hat? Are you sure?
No hat. No props. Keith can do all the props.
Okay, we're happy to give you some. I have some Santa Claus hats back here if you need them.
No, we're good. I'm good right now.
Okay.
Crystal ball. What do you want me to answer?
We got some crystal ball predictions. Keith, do you have some questions that you want to ask for the crystal ball?
What are you talking about?
You see, Keith?
See, yeah. I knew he would handle it for me.
We know he has no shame. We know he has absolutely no shame.
I have a lot of things. With shame, I definitely don't have any of it. So
Wizardry. I like it.
yeah, look, I'm trying to pivot from serious to fun here, and it's a little bit difficult for us because this was an important show and an important topic to talk about. But what does your let's stay on the tax thing, right? So if you had a crystal ball and if you had all your budgets, are you predicting that I'm going to pay more per month, or do you think that we're going to get into this what we call the balanced budget? Am I going to pay more money to live in Fluvanna, Albemarle County?
Yeah, I can't answer for Fluvanna, but I mean that's a question actually that gets asked of us probably every single year at this time, and it's for me to be able to answer that question would probably be just me being political and saying something that I think would be favorable to people listening to me. But the real answer is that county executive is going to bring us a budget. And I'm not going to answer that question until I see what that budget looks like and then go through the budget process to determine it.
Let me try it a different way. If you can, you will.
What's that?
If you can keep my tax dollars the same, will you?
Well, if we ever get to a point where we feel we have the revenue to hit and achieve our strategic plan and the things that are expected of us, then that's going to tell us whether it's more, same, or less. And to just sit here and presume it could never be less would be foolish. All options would be on the table because it comes down to our job is to identify what the revenue is going to be used for. What are you programming the tax dollars for? And for me, though, I have to be able to say that's programmed there because this is what it's going to do, and it ties to our overall vision and strategic plan this way. And when I can't make that link or that thread, then that shouldn't be in there. So if we've got the revenue to do that, then you shouldn't need to ask for more. And if you have more than what you need, then you shouldn't take it.
So thank you for giving me a moment to think. Good job. Because that's what that all was about. That's what that all was about. We're going to do a little gauntlet stuff here.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
We haven't done that in like years.
Ned Galloway on the gauntlet.
I don't know what that means. Is this
Ned,
It's a great thing.
I want to emphasize this again. You are fantastic in this live talk show setting.
Yeah.
Seriously, dude.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, not everyone can do this.
I like it. I have fun.
Yeah, you are doing a hell of a job right here.
And
Keep the coffee coming. Shenandoah Joe.
Shenandoah Joe.
There you go, Ned Galloway.
Okay, I've been replaced.
The man
See you
needs his
later.
own show here. He's damn
I just
good.
got replaced. I just feel like after 245 shows, I just got fired.
You know what we're going to do? I think this show is so good, and we're really going to put him on the fly here. We're going to replay this show in place of the I Love Seville show at 12:30.
Oh, wow.
Supervisors, it's the first time in history of this network. Over 1,800 shows, we're going to do this for the first time. Ned Galloway. Very good. And multiple people are saying on the feed here, you have my vote. That is quite a compliment for Ned Galloway.
I appreciate
maybe that the value proposition is maybe greater if you had an opponent in the race here. But regardless,
Just
still
saying.
props for Ned. Props for Ned.
So let's talk about Ned. Let's just have fun and talk about Ned.
Hello, Neil Williamson.
Hey,
Let's
Neil.
say something to Neil.
Oh,
who's watching the show.
no.
That's who will be sitting there.
Neil, we
next
miss
time.
you. We got a chair for you.
Yeah, but Neil went under the knife. So
We know. We're not.
He's got a
So
new.
let's be nice
He's
to
got
Neil.
a new knee, right? Neil has a new knee.
And I'll just make up a new word for that.
Yeah.
Let me say this, though. You have got three, I'm going to call it three people here, which we don't often get to do. But when you sit up there, I was talking a little bit earlier about how, you get a lot of attention sometimes when you got some adversarial confrontational things in front of you. But the rest of the meetings don't necessarily, you wonder what the audience is going to be. Neil Williamson, Sean Tubbs, and Allison Rabel are three incredible individuals in this community. They hang in there.
I'll tag
they
them right
listen
now.
to all those conversations.
Yeah.
And they do their darndest to get that information out, and they are committed to saying that the knowledge and what you're hearing from 1 p.m. all the way to 10, not just one individual topic, is incredibly important. So I appreciate the work they
The
do.
commitment to do that is
Yep.
huge.
Huge.
I said yesterday on yesterday's show that Allison Rabel was a top 50 market journalist, and we're extremely fortunate to have someone of that caliber in this market for this long. Because my first job out of UVA was at the Daily Progress, and I know how brutal that job is from a pay and work experience or expectation standpoint.
And what I love about all three is they work really hard to make sure people get it right. So when they see the information's off or somebody's skewing it or slanting it a different way, they're not afraid to speak up and get out there and correct the record, if you would.
I devour all the three of those folks' subjects. So let's have a little bit of fun. Fun. So this is the first question.
We're running the gauntlet.
We're just going to
Okay,
ask fun questions.
I like it. We're running the gauntlet.
Let's we had enough of serious stuff. Let's just have a little bit of fun. So, what skill or talent you don't currently? Oh, my Apple Watch. My Apple Watch.
Siri's jumping in here. Don't interrupt us,
Siri's going to
Siri.
answer me.
Yeah.
Answer for me.
I can't. Siri won't even let me talk today.
Focus.
He won't let me.
Focus
No, he
on
won't.
Supervisor Galloway.
How many shows have you watched that
Every
of our
time
show?
you get ready to ask the question, I've been carefully making sure I had coffee, so if I needed to do a spit take.
This is the first show that I probably only spoke 5 sentences. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Okay, skill or talent you currently don't possess that you wish you had.
Skill or talent that I don't have that I wish I...
It's got to be like this.
Oh, that's a great question.
It's no political.
You can't ask gauntlet questions to me. I think about it too.
Okay. Come on.
Skill or talent don't I have that I wish I had? Better time management skills.
Okay, cool.
That's interesting because you were supposed to be out of here at 11:30. That's 11:58.
See?
11:58.
Case in point.
All right, my question for you: when the Galloways are going out for dinner in
good
this
question.
area, where are the Galloways going first?
Whiskey jar.
Very good. That's a good call. Wilson Ritchie spot.
And and some news about that, right? You might want to share about
So
Barbadero.
the Bebedero is going to the Downtown Grill spot. What I'm hearing is Wilson Ritchie purchased the Downtown Grill building.
Yep.
Is subdividing it, bringing a brewery. I don't want to spill the beans here. Which one is going to come to the downtown mall? And Citizen Bull Shop, that is now rebranded to Lucky Blues, is replacing the Bebedero upstairs above Whiskey Jar.
So
So some musical chairs on the downtown mall.
Well, and the answer is like if you said, "Well, where's Ned and Julie going? Where's the family going?" I mean, it does change, right? Based on
Well,
there's so
Ned and
many
Julie.
options,
Where's Ned and Julie going?
Well, Whiskey Jar is a hot spot there too, but it's not always for dinner, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
really, what do you mean?
They have a lot of selection.
The
right?
great whiskey.
One of my
Whiskey
favorite
Jar.
things, I was in there having drinks with some folks. It was Halloween night, I think, and there was a gentleman, the film festival was going on. And if you've been to the Whiskey Jar, there's what? So many bourbon options right up there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can stare right at them. And it was great because the gentleman said, "I'd like a bourbon," and the bartender was like,
Really?
"Which
Sir?
one?" And then I was waiting for it. I was like, "He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it." And he went, "Well, what do you have?" And I went, "Oh my God,
And it was right in front of him.
the bartender's look on her face when she was like, "Are you kidding me?"
So if you're the bartender, don't you go there for like the $22 pour?
Well, but
and
I
serve
mean-
them the $22 pour?
They're knowledgeable. They've got great selection of all of that. But I mean, the fact that it's there, so she just handed the menu very, very nicely. She could have probably made several comments, went
Let
and
me know
dealt with
when you're
other
ready.
people, and came back. I was like, wow, man, look, right there.
To go back to the Berberdero, if you ever, we love going there. We love the whole team over there. But if you ever actually been in that building, as a recovering developer and builder, you can feel the floor go up and down. And every time I would go for dinner with Yona, I'd be sitting up against the back wall.
Well, that's like when you're on Freebridge and you're waiting at the traffic
And it
light, and
bounces.
the bridge is I'm like, what is going on here? But it's supposed to do that. The
That-
bridge
it-
is supposed to do. I'm not sure the building is supposed to do that.
Well,
but the bridge is supposed to. Do
I'll brush off a little development building. When something flexes, it's actually stronger than it is actually rigid. Okay.
I got one for him. That's a good one. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Jeez.
Well, normally you're quicker with jumping in here. Go ahead. Your question. Your question, Smith.
I'm going to ask Mr. Predicto. Does Keith Smith love Jerry Miller today?
I was going to say yes.
It has been determined so.
Yeah, I knew it. I told you. Your question over there, Keith Smith.
White liquor or brown liquor? What do you prefer?
Brown.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Here's a good
I'm
one.
the only white liquor guy.
When is the next voting cycle that a Republican will win a spot on the Board of
Oh,
Supervisors?
wow. No, that you got to ask
Crystal
Mr.
ball,
Predicto.
Mr. Predicto.
Well, I mean, politically, it's first off, I think that at local government, if you have when people go out and they're going to consider candidates, they're going to go, okay, well, what do I have here? I think sometimes at the local level, there are some things that rise to that political party kind of conversation, but a lot of times it goes back to, well, what is that? How does that person think and how do they process decisions? That's what we're really voting for. And sometimes that's not necessarily a political party thing. The toughest, the closest district that we have in Albemarle, I think, is the Scottsville district.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay, here's a follow-up question for you. Is it easier to get elected in Albemarle County as an independent or a Republican?
So it used to be, Albemarle
We
County
don't
used to be.
have, I mean,
Albemarle, Ken Boyd was the last Republican. Is
the
that-
last independent was Dennis Rooker.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Same
think
time
the
as
first,
Boyd, right?
I think when Supervisor McKeel first ran for the supervisors after years of running, because you run as an independent on the school board, so she just continued with that. But the last two times, I believe, she's ran as a Democrat. So Supervisor McKeel and Supervisor Rooker would be the last true, what would be labeled independents on the board.
I sat on several commissions and boards with Dennis. He's a rock star. I enjoyed I've always learned something from him. May not have agreed on all the decisions, but he was always fair, equitable, and listened to what you had to say. On that end of it, I enjoyed very much so doing that. All righty, so you're on a deserted island.
You love this question.
I love this question. Well, this tells a lot. You're on a deserted island. You're only allowed to bring one book with you. What is that book going to be?
The Complete Works by William Shakespeare.
You know what? I should have known that before I asked the damn question.
You
I
knew
forgot.
the answer to that. That book is all you. I mean, so I was a theater major early on.
Should have known that.
Taught theater for 6 years in Shaker
You got a
Heights.
PhD. Most people
But
do
I've
not know
often
that.
said that if you
I didn't
had
know that.
one book that you could take, like if some otherworldly entity came and you said, we need a complete record of what humanity is, I think you could give them the Complete Works by William Shakespeare, and that would
And
take
why
care
is
of it.
that?
Because
Why is that, Professor?
That's all in there, right? It's all in there. Tragedy, love, politics, war. I mean, everything's covered.
I think the last person other than Keith Smith that made up new words was William Shakespeare. He made up words, did he not?
Well, and this is normally where you say the book that should be on the deserted island.
So it's a trick question. A survival manual.
a survival manual. Wow.
All right, I'm just saying.
What is your favorite? What is your favorite dish here in Central Virginia to eat?
Favorite
You
dish
personally.
to eat, me personally. It's hard for me to turn down a steak, a good
Yeah.
steak, in a meal.
So the barn.
But there are.
So where do you get that steak?
Well, you go to different places. It's not like I just go there to get a steak.
South and Central was that. I'll tell you what.
South and Central's brand new. Yes, have had to steak. I mean, they're phenomenal. But I mean, just from a food perspective, it's like, man, a good steak's hard to beat.
And
Now for burritos, Al Carbone. over in Woodbrook, and I think they're opened up over on
Fifth Street
Fifth Street Station now. But man, they're love the burrito that they put out, and it's a healthy burrito.
So you're
So
get-
different answers, right, based on
You
what
played
you're in
that
the mood,
well,
what you're in the
Supervisor
mood
Galloway.
for.
I was thinking, what a damn politician.
He played that well. He played that
Well,
so
there's
well.
the French place
So
down.
normally I'm the guy on the show that's playing that, and you've taken it over to me.
He
Thank
did
you
well
very
there.
much. So you and your lovely wife, where's your get away from it all spot? You can go away for 3 or 4 days. Where are you going to go?
You know, honestly, we've been trying to figure that out. That's not, my wife up until about 6 months ago was a PICU nurse, and her schedule was it because she was working all night shifts. And we have 3 kids, and my schedule, driving down to Midlothian and Richmond for the last 2 years has been very difficult. So to find an hour, let alone time to go do something, has been very, very challenging for us. So we just did a trip to Cleveland, and that was truly about getting away, her getting to spend some time with some friends.
I thought that was a family
high
kind
school
of
friend.
thing, right?
No, it was
It
no
was
kids.
really?
It was just Julie and I going
I'm
up.
jealous.
It was her to see, like I said, she saw people she hasn't seen in 20 plus years that she went to high school with. And I got to meet them. I hadn't met them either. And that was truly about, and when we came back from that, I'm in my brain, I'm like, this is more doable. This is not a once every 5-year thing. This is something that we should be doing regularly. So
Well,
we're
he
figuring
doesn't know
out.
that my wife and I are going to sneak away from my birthday, but he doesn't know it yet.
How do you told me the other day, and I was flabbergasted.
You were flabbergasted. Yeah.
How many hours are you clocking each week?
Oh, stop it.
with car lots and Albemarle County responsibilities.
So tell us what an average week looks like to you.
Well, you don't track that, first off, because if you did, then
you get demoralized.
But this
Well,
is
it's important to talk about this, Ned, because people, we talk about this on the show all the time. I've been always saying this, to do your job well, you've got to put, and I know you do this, you got to put like 30 to 40 hours
Is
in.
that right?
Well, it's different for every person because of how fast you can process information. And, my first
That's
couple of
probably
years.
why I never got elected.
But
'cause
when
I
you're
can't
on your
drive.
first couple years of the school board, it took me a lot longer to get through things. But once you kind of get the handle of it, you can move through things a lot faster. So, Jim Andrews will be our newest supervisor. This first year, his
fire
prep,
hose.
it's going to take him longer to prep this first year because he has to fill background, he's got to get used to the process, he's got to do all of that. But by year 3 or 4, he's going to be able to move through that faster. So, and you have to do that in a short amount of time. The packet releases on a Thursday, the meeting's the following Wednesday. So processing information varies by individual. In terms of constituent service, the meetings and all of that, I guess I don't really know what the total hours
Let's
are.
try it this way. You're the chairman. How many other bodies do you sit on?
So the supervisors, then I'm on the MPO, the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission,
Regional Housing Partnership.
the Regional Housing Partnership. Those are the main ones that add to additional meetings on a monthly basis.
Do you have to do that?
Well, you have committees, boards and commissions that the board has affiliated, and then there are certain ones that have to be, a supervisor must be on 1 or 2. So like this January 5th will be our reorganization meeting. So if there's going to be any changes, that's when the 6 of us will get together and determine who's going where and who wants to do what. So I've said it, I figure out my work schedule. I have Sunday off, I have Wednesday off. So my work days are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that's basically a 9 to 7. If it truly opened and closed at start and end times, it'd be 9 to 7.
And I know the 7 o'clock doesn't work because I track you down at 7 o'clock and I see you there.
So Wednesdays are the
Poor
day
Ned.
where, Wednesday's what I call my county day. So I tend to put in, if I need to do a meeting or if I need to do something outside of those specific boards or commissions, then I try to target that to a Wednesday. And then my rule has always been, as Keith has also learned, is Sundays off limits. You don't get me on Sunday.
Phone's
So
off.
I don't do any email, I don't do any texts. If you're calling me about a county issue on Sunday, you usually get the call back on Monday.
That took
So-
a couple of phone calls for me to figure
So,
that
dude,
out.
you're clocking like 80 hours a week
Yeah,
here.
see.
So Monday through Friday, I don't tend to do, just because Saturday's a busy retail day, you don't do a lot of county stuff on a Saturday. But throughout the week, I also am in a position where, the Zoom stuff has really helped allow me to pull this off. And you have to have an employer, if you're working full-time, you have to have an employer that's supportive of what you're doing, which car lots, they're great about. And they like having employees that give back and do things in the community in a variety of different ways. And this is how I choose to do it, so, and they're very supportive of that. So, when I say getting better at time management, it's figuring out, okay, I can't necessarily wait till Wednesday to get through some emails. So when do I plug that in that's not to the detriment of, work, family, myself, to stay on top of it?
So something I've always been advocating, and you tell me if I'm off base on it here. It's an 80. Chevy's right. You work 80 hours a week, because I know you do, because I'm in half of the meetings with you, so I know how much time that you're putting in, plus your work.
I think we should give Julie some props here.
Well, that's where I was literally going to go.
This beautiful better half, right?
And car lots too, to allow you to do that, right? Because you're managing and you're running. You're the general manager, so you're responsible for all that. But something I've always been advocating, and I know it's budget season. If you had a dedicated staff member, would that make your job? I know it would make your job easier. Would you be more efficient at the county side of things?
Per
wonder.
supervisor?
Or one for two, or some.
I don't know. I wonder. I wonder if that's the case, because when we went to VACO this year, and
larger jurisdictions do that.
They each have a staffer, and I'm like, wow.
So talk about that. Which jurisdictions?
I think it was Fairfax.
Yes, Fairfax.
Loudoun County, and they have staffers, and I'm like, wow. To me, that it's almost like too much, because now I have to manage a whole
people,
other person.
Right.
Well, that's somebody else's job. The reason I think it's important, particularly if you're a new board of supervisor coming in or something, it creates this institutional memory. I tell the story all the time of when I lost my, I forgot to renew
Your
my
passport.
My pass.
Tom Perriello,
And
staffer.
Thank you, Tom Perriello. We spend way too much time together.
I hear the
What
same
am I
stories.
thinking? What am I thinking next?
Shut up, Miller.
Shut up, Miller. Will Miller shut up?
The answer is yes.
Well,
So it said, who didn't hear it? Now's not the right time to ask that question.
Oh, God.
This damn thing is smart.
but it's important. I'm going to say this, because I've said this before. You have to have. I think it's important for people that where we do have a part-time board, and the job is to. And I always remind myself of that. This is a part-time responsibility.
Can I emphasize this? Your pay, is it $16,900 a year you get for this?
Well, I think the chair you get a little bit more, right?
It's something in that ballpark.
Yeah. Okay.
16 or 18, yeah.
But the idea is that for folks, I said it when I was on a school board, it's important for people that have kids in the schools to be on the school board. I think it's important for people that are working and doing that to be able to participate and be involved in local government, whether it's elected or on our boards and commissions, because you're out in it. That's not to say that the folks that are retired or don't have to work or self-employed or things are not valuable to it, but it's possible to be able to do full-time gigs and do this. It's not the easiest, so if there was ever a way to get to, it would certainly open it up if this were a full-time position that was paid as such for people to participate, but I don't want people to think that it's so overwhelming that it can't be done. It can be done, and it's if you care about it and like it, then don't let the worry, especially if you're a better time manager than me, you'll figure it out.
Well, I think you're not giving yourself enough credit.
Totally.
It's you're working 80 hours a week. That's a pretty hard thing to manage. Period.
And you do it well.
He does it very well.
Yeah. We got to do this. It's 12:15. This is the longest
I'm
show
sorry.
we've ever done.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to
I do
actually
have to try to
replay
do that.
this here in 16 minutes, which really puts him on a
Got
tough
it.
spot here.
Got
We're
it.
done.
Got it.
How about, you sure you don't want to wear the hat?
That was almost the spit take.
Okay. I like you, Ned. The Ned Galloway show would kill it, by the way.
Well, he's going to come back. He
The Ned
promised.
Galloway show would be well
Neil
watched.
Williamson with Neil Williamson on the show.
Well, more than that one. But I got
that's the next
a whole
one.
bunch of other questions I didn't even get to. So, thank you, Ned, for
Yeah, dude,
coming.
you were
Thank
great.
you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Next show we'll have a lot more fun.
And appreciate it. Thank you letting me talk a little bit about car lots. That was great.
Absolutely.
Well, it's important because if they don't let you do your job, then you can't do your job for the people. So that's an important shout out to do.
Chairman Ned Galloway, Keith Smith. My name is Jerry Miller. Judah Wickower is our North Star and compass here at this network. He really keeps us on point. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I truly and sincerely mean this. We are going to replay this show in 14 minutes. I thought it was that good. Thank you for joining us, guys, and please, please, please keep it local in this community. Take care. Excellent work, fellas. Thank you.